Our speaker this morning, we had somebody designated to speak to us this morning in healthcare. That was the plan. You know how things go. And we thought it was going to happen until my plane landed on Saturday night. And we realized that she wasn't going to be here. I was really trying to get you to get insight into our catering health systems and how they've been able to integrate their organization to the point where their performance level have gone significantly higher than they've ever done, because they've been able to integrate their system in such a way that it makes a lot of sense. Well, she cannot be here. I cannot tell her story. But I want us to spend the next few minutes that we have to discuss, or for you to listen in on the conversation. I'm going to ask Candace to first join me, and have a seat, Candace. And I want us to talk about her journey. Candace is the new treasurer, chief financial officer of Allegheny West Conference. And I want us to spend a few minutes to first talk. We'll do this in three phases. This is phase one. Phase two, we'll invite others to join her, and I'll introduce them later on. And then phase three, we will speak about the symphony orchestra and financial leadership. And I'm hoping that this will be a beneficial interaction that we'll have. And I'm asking you, I know some of you don't like to ask questions, but I hope you ask questions. If you don't feel like asking questions, do we have a way of them texting their questions? Yep. Okay, you have instructions on how to do that? Okay. What was that? Okay, you want to give them the instructions now? So they will know what to do, and Robert receives the questions? Okay, so Robert, you'll receive those questions in case somebody doesn't want to raise their hand but they want to ask a question. We'll have that opportunity to do that. What we are trying to do all day today is to create a learning environment. It's all about learning. It's all about trying to enhance what we know and to share what we know. I am still learning. You all still learning. And that's all it's all about. That's what it's all about, for us to be here to learn. So that's the text. Text your question to this number here, and Robert will be able to, anytime he wants to ask anything, any questions from us, he will do that. Well, good morning, Candace.
Good morning, Elder Bardu.
Tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you begin in denominational work?
Well, in 2006, I interned at South Central Conference for an auditing position. I did it for a summer, and when I was graduating in 2007, I was looking for a job my senior year, and I couldn't find one. So in between, I got asked to come back as an intern, as a summer intern for auditing. And at the end of the program, actually before the program even began, the treasurer for South Central Conference, the assistant treasurer for the South Central Conference, called me on a Sunday morning. She's like, somebody's looking for an intern. It's in Ohio. I don't want you to take it because I want you to come work for me. But just listen to her. And of course, that person was Zenobia Siebert who called me. And she was like, I'm interested. I want you to come. I think that Wednesday she flew me up to Ohio, interviewed me, and hired me right on the spot. That is how I got into the church work so far. Mm-hmm.
And then you became an intern.
I became an intern for 2 years.
Okay, what happened during your internship?
What happened through my internship? Well, Zenobia exposed me to a lot. I think my first day, I remember it very vividly. She gave me some bank reconciliations to do for Plant Fund, and I looked like, what is this? But sure enough, she was willing to teach, and she exposed me to the right resources to get help when needed. She allowed me to, I guess, view each area. She gave me payroll for a year. She allowed me to expose me to remittances, to financials. She taught me a lot, and I also did auditing as well. So I was exposed to a lot those 2 years.
So you have a degree in accounting, and you have a master's in?
I have an MBA with a concentration in human
in
resources.
human resources.
Mhm.
So how did that prepare you for treasury work?
Well, it gave me the technical skills that I needed. However, technical skills also need some backup. It needs some other things like leadership skills and all that stuff. But the degrees more so gave me an overall picture of what I was going into.
Now, I remember when I came out of Andrews and I went to work for South Central Conference, and the first time I took a look at the financial statements, it looked very strange to me.
It looks strange to me too.
Yeah. In our days, we had what they call the tithe fund, the specific purpose fund. Those of you oldies will remember that. And I was trying to understand what exactly I was looking at, and none of it made sense to me. In grad school, we did a lot of case studies. We looked at a lot of, we spent time reviewing financials of a lot of corporations. And what I saw with the conference did not look like anything I was familiar with. So how was that for you?
The same. So I was exposed to the financials. I didn't say I understood them. There's a big difference. Being exposed, I remember sitting in meetings when she would come around to she'll have all the staff come and review the financials. I would look like, okay, there's cash, all right. And that's all I looked at. It wasn't until I become an interim treasurer that I was really digging and studying, and well, that's not true. Seth told me probably a year before to get engulfed and take that financial home and break it apart. And I did that, and I started to understand a little bit, but it wasn't until I really got my hands wet that I grasped the concept of what church financial statements are.
And we'll come back to that. So during your 2 years of internship, what were some of the specific things that you did?
Oh, so I did payroll. I did accounts payables. I did deposits, receipting, JVs, medical. So I did everything in Treasury kind of, except for, well, I didn't do remittances. I was exposed to it, I was trained on it, but everything else, I was basically aware of what was happening. The one thing that I probably would have wanted to learn a little bit more was the budgeting side and reporting of the financials.
Did you enjoy everything that you were going through, all the things you were learning? Did you enjoy all of it?
I don't like payroll. I love learning new things. Absolutely love learning new things. However, yeah, there's certain parts of Treasury that I can do without, but I did like the experience of going through it.
So after you were done with your internship, what happened?
They hired me. Yay.
And then what?
And then
What were you doing?
I was doing a whole lot more. Got a little bit more responsibility. I became assistant treasurer, and I was also human resources. So I got to play with Plan Fund. I was in charge of Plan Fund, the association treasurer, reporting that, understanding that. Still don't understand it. Thank you, Emmanuel, for teaching. And just doing day-to-day activities, yeah.
Do you remember calling me one time some years ago and saying to me, Seth, I think I need to transition? Now, she doesn't know I'm asking all these questions.
I have no clue what he's asking.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, I do. I remember that conversation.
And how did that conversation go?
So the conversation went such as this. I was asking Seth, I really wanted to get out of, I guess, Ohio and church work all together. However, I listened to the Lord, and I prayed, and I consulted my mentor. And Seth was like, so what are you trying to look at? And I told him
Go ahead.
Okay, it was for Adventist Risk Management. Sorry, Jermaine. So I was telling him that I interviewed for the position. I really like it. I want the transition, but I'm not 100% sure. And Seth told me, I can't make a decision for you, but I will say that you should probably stay where you are because the Lord has something in store for you. And I knew what that meant, and I was like, okay. In my head, I was like, no, I'm not becoming treasurer. I know that's what he's looking for. That's not going to happen to me. I refuse. So when he was telling me, just be careful, weigh your pros and cons, understand the aspect of what they're asking you to do, and look at your future and what you're doing right now. So I did that, and I prayed about it, and I decided to stay.
Well, let me give a little commercial before I ask you my next question.
Okay.
That's for those of you who are here, and especially for those who are here for the first time. I pray that you're taking good notes, because by the end of today, somebody's going to walk away with a gift card for $500. Is that a good thing?
It's a great thing, and it's not going to be me or Andrew or anybody else from Potomac or Chesapeake. I'm kidding.
So, by the way, Candace, so one day we heard Zenobia was about to leave.
Yes. Which time?
Whichever time.
Okay.
What was going through your head?
I was thinking time for me to leave. It's time for a transition for me as well. But at the same time, I knew that wasn't going to happen. Mm-hmm.
And so the executive committee met,
Yes.
and you were asked to serve as an interim treasurer.
Yes.
What went through your mind?
Lord help me. I was so nervous. I was excited. I was eager. I've been in Allegheny West for now 8.5 years. So being tasked with this, it was a big responsibility. And I was thinking, wow, they entrusted me, God entrusted me as a young female treasurer to do this. This is a big task. So I wanted to hit the ground running, and I did just that. I got voted as interim December 14th. I thought that I started January 1st. I didn't know I started December 14th.
And were you ready for the job?
When you say ready, what does that mean?
Were you ready?
I don't think anybody's ready for something that different. I was ready to start the journey. I don't think I was really mentally and physically prepared for what was ahead of me, but I was excited for it.
So now that you've been treasurer since December of last year,
Interim.
you were interim for a while, and then you got voted in as
Treasurer, yes.
as treasurer. Step back for a minute and look your view of being a treasurer, and post the assignment, compare the two.
So before I became treasurer, interim treasurer, I thought the treasurer stayed in meetings all day and stayed behind her desk and worked all the time. And basically just handled the budget and the financials. After I saw that there was a bigger picture on top of meetings and budgets and financials. You're managing individuals. You're managing a whole bunch of employees. You're also doing legal work, and you're also getting your feet wet in so many different aspects that you're not really aware that somebody else was doing. So it was interesting. And then the audit, all the treasurers, I give you guys all props for doing the audit. Preparing financials, it was a year that I experienced everything all at once to me. But it was something that I appreciated because I learned a lot, and I had the right people in the right places to help me and support me.
And it's no secret that Allegheny West have had some financial challenges.
Absolutely not. So think about it. You just get introduced as interim treasurer. You find out that you're in debt, and you have to let people go. Like, the first 6 months of thinking that you're in a great position, you have this great opportunity, and you get hit with something big like that. How do you handle that? How do you not cave in and want to run? God, that's all I can say. I remember going home at 12 o'clock at night, almost every day from work, going into my prayer closet and asking God, you need to help me because I do not know if I can do this. And every day he gave me the strength, and he always had someone call me that day to encourage me. So, yeah.
So how was your first budget?
You know how my first budget is. No, my first budget was really hard. It was an experience because there were so much things that you don't know coming in, and then there were things that you're like, okay, this needs to be accounted for. You had debt that you need to account for in your budget, and it wasn't balancing. It was not balancing. We had so much more expenses than we had income, and that's why letting go people was the only decision that we had to make.
Were you on this journey all by yourself, or did you get any help?
Absolutely not. And this is probably the reason why I'm still here sitting in front of you right now. So on top of having an administration there to help me and to support me, I had the union here to support me. When I say they did the most, coming from Tabitha coming to my office, from Carol Wright coming to my office, to IT coming to my office, to Seth spending 2 weeks at my office. They literally came and sat down and helped me. And not just coming, I was also granted the opportunity to come to the union when I was struggling with things. So Tabitha and all of them are my best friends now. Oh, yes, and these wonderful auditors, yes.
So what's the best part of the job?
I'm still smiling. So I'm going to say the best part is my team. My team has been very supportive, encouraging. They are there to pick up the slack when I'm missing something. But God has always provided the help that I needed at the right time. And I'm just grateful for that. I love the fact that the environment has changed. I love that people see that I'm confident in what I'm doing and I know what I'm doing, and they believe the words that are coming out my mouth. So I enjoy helping others.
Would you say you've made more friends since you became treasurer?
See, that word friends, no. And Seth, listen, I came to Seth's office a couple of weeks ago, and I said, you did not tell me this was a lonely job. And yes, I am single, so I don't go home to somebody and say, oh, this is what happened today. I go home and I'm like, okay, Lord, you need to help me. It's the people that you think are your friends before now just ask you about work stuff or gossip or something. So you have to be careful who you speak to, and I have learned that very quickly. So this job, it doesn't come with a lot of friends, but it comes with a lot of support.
That's great. And so I said to you, well, I didn't say it to you then, but leadership can be a lonely road.
Absolutely.
And there are things you cannot say to everyone. There are things that you get to know you cannot share. Your friends may not fully understand you. There are times those who work around you, though, your staff may not understand what the decisions that you are making because they're in a different place. I remember when I was a controller before I became treasurer, and I would look at my boss real funny and wonder why he made certain decisions, and thought some of those decisions were foolish decisions. Until I stepped in his shoes.
Yep.
And then my staff began looking at me funny. But I had the picture back then and I understood. So it can be a lonely job, but you have a way to deal with that, right?
I'm working on it.
All right.
I feel like there is a need for what did you call it?
What did I call it?
An escape or outlet. An outlet. There we go. An outlet for you to step away from the job and to have somewhat of a social life in the Adventist world, but a social life, something.
But you also spend a lot of time in your prayer closet.
Absolutely. God, I will say that this job has taken my spiritual life to the next level. I have relied on him a whole lot more, trusting him a whole lot more, and understanding the decisions that he has made for my life.
Great. So there are many others who will come in your stead. There are many in this room who are going the journey that you've already taken. As a new CFO, what would your advice to them be?
My advice would be, 1, seek God in everything that you do. 2, the one thing that I learned that is if I don't know something, I'm going to ask and don't just assume. And just because I have the position doesn't mean I know everything. To ask for help and seek support. But on top of that, anything overall is to rely, I can say this. Put the right people on the bus in the right position. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, well, I guess that's a good transition point when you're talking about putting the right people on the bus. Now, you've been part of my mentoring group, right?
Yeah.
And we've been doing this for almost a couple of years now.
Yep.
So why don't we invite the rest of them to come join us?
Absolutely.
And let's have a further conversation on our journey in the mentoring group.
Absolutely.
Okay, so where are they?
Robert, Okemis, Karen, Emmanuel. Am I missing somebody? Tabitha?
Yeah, Tabitha will join us later.
Oh, later. Timothy. That's who I'm missing.
Yes, he stepped out.
Okay.
Okay.
You're in the wrong seat, Emmanuel. Come sit next to me. Best friend. It's okay. You can come sit next to me, Rob.
So we've spent since May of last year, we've spent some time going through a mentoring program. I called all of our conference treasurers and I said, give me the name of one person you would like me to work with so that we can begin to prepare leadership for tomorrow. The work that we do today, someday we're going to have to step off the stage and somebody else is going to have to take our places. And so with that in mind, we decided, well, let's find individuals who can begin to prep for that day. And we've been on a journey. We've been hanging out a lot. And I remember our very first meeting, we spent some time just talking about our own lives, where we've come from, things that we have done. What was your impression of that sharing time? And anybody can join in. Well, first of all, let's go down and just introduce yourselves, the conference that you're with, and your current position. Let's start with you, Okemis.
Okemis Williams, Potomac Conference, Associate Treasurer.
Okay.
Robert Chandler with New Jersey Conference. I'm the accountant.
Robert Patterson, Jr., the Allegheny East Conference, under Treasurer.
Karen Schneider, Pennsylvania Conference, Associate Treasurer.
Emmanuel Asiedu, the one who left the best employer in the whole world, that's GCAS, and decided to go to the greatest conference in the whole world, that is Chesapeake Conference, the Great Chesapeake Conference. And I'm currently at the wonderful place that is Columbia Union Revolving Fund.
Okay, so real briefly, we spent some time talking about our lives, the journey where God has brought us from, getting to know each other. What was your impression of that conversation that we had?
I am not alone. There are other people experiencing similar challenges in other conferences.
All right, anyone else?
I enjoy hearing the different backgrounds where everyone came from. It wasn't all wrapped up in a bow. It was a hard journey for each person. So it was good to hear that.
Okay. Now, we spent some time, we were using a textbook. That's a book that we've been using, and we are still using. It's called what?
Good to Great.
It's called Good to Great. Would you recommend this book?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Let us spend a few minutes discussing some of the high points of the book. And I don't have my book with me. You have your book. But I want each one of us to spend a moment to speak to some of the issues that we discussed. And the purpose and the reason why we did that, it was not so much just to grab theory from some author, but to grab concepts that we can translate into what we do in our work here in our conferences. So I'm not sure who wants to start. Emmanuel, you want to go first? That's great. Okay.
I think one thing that the book discussed was that the enemy of greatness is good, you know, and when I was looking at it, I said, good is great enough for me. So how can good be an enemy of greatness? And I think what the book discussed was that when people reach at a certain level that they think, you know, they are fine, they don't continue to improve. And they mentioned some great companies, some good companies that eventually, instead of doing a continuous improvement in order to reach greatness, they just fell on the wayside because they did not do improvements to sustain the good that they reached.
Okay. Anyone else?
My takeaway from it was, in the book, they talked about having the right people on the bus.
Okay.
And we found out that you just don't have the right people, but you have to make sure they're in the right seat on the bus to make sure that you can really go from good to great.
So that means that there's a possibility you could have an organization that has people on the bus. They may be good people, but they may be in the wrong seat.
Right.
And if they're in the wrong seat, then that means that they may not be as productive as you want them to.
Absolutely.
So what happens then in that case? If you were in charge, then what do you do?
You have to make sure that they can get in the right seat.
You have to make sure they can get in the right seat. I remember a situation when I was the treasurer in another conference, and one of the first things folks asked me was, when I was first assigned, there was a young man who was the assistant treasurer. He came to me and said, well, Elder Bardu, I'm ready to become the associate treasurer. And I said to him, well, I don't really know you. I just got here, so I said the right person will evolve to become associate treasurer. Well, after so many months, there was a young lady who was, I think she had the title of accountant, and I promoted her to become assistant treasurer. So now the fellow that she was reporting to, they had the same ranking. And a few months later, she became his boss. She became the associate treasurer. Why? Because she understood the system. She understood me. She understood my thinking. She could finish my sentence. I needed somebody who could run treasury when I was not around. She was on the bus. She was not in the right seat. They were not happy that I had to rearrange the seats on the bus. But sometimes as leaders, I know it's sometimes very tough to do, but you have to know when to move people around. You know, it happens in pastoral ministry also. We had a pastor, he was in one district, Frank, and he wasn't doing well. But because we were able to find, we profiled the churches, we moved him to a different church, and he flourished. He was in the wrong seat. And so it's very important, treasurers and all the rest of us, that we try to find the right place, the right seats for those who work for us. All right, who's next?
Sorry. So the one thing that affected me a lot in this book was the brutal facts.
Brutal facts, okay.
Basically, you have to confront your reality and not sugarcoat. There are certain levels of our organizations that we try to hide, or we kind of play down things that really need to come forward. But this book is telling us that we need to confront it, face our fears of saying, hey, we're financially struggling, and this is why, and realizing that you have to restructure things in order to come out on the other side to be a great company.
And that's one of the worst things we can do, especially when we're communicating with our executive committee, not to tell them the way things really are. And sometimes we try to find ways to sugarcoat things, and we have to be very straightforward. We have to face those facts, and God will bless our ministry. Yes, sir.
I think I'll speak to the book mentioning the fact that there are different levels of leadership. And the great company tried to get to what we call a level 5 leadership. A level 5 leadership is a leadership wherein, and before I finish this, one of the things that Seth always asks us at every meeting that we attend is where can we utilize some of what we learn? Oh, wow. That's a big difference. He always asks us, where can we utilize this in what we currently do? For some of us here, it's kind of hard because we're not in the position to make certain decisions. So when I look at the level 5 leadership, I have to apply to what I know within the church, from the pastor on all the way on up. And what a level 5 leader is to a great company is a leader that put the company first, not his ego, not his desires, but his drive is for the company, which says that when this leader vacates that leadership position, there's not a hole. Because the company is great, not the leader. And so to me, within the church, we have to make the church great and not the pastor. We have to make the conference great and not the president, and so forth. You can't understand what we're saying. So I take that away along with a lot of other things. I want to share that with you this morning.
So when I leave my job, when I step away from my job as treasurer of Columbia Union, if all of a sudden the Treasury Department of Columbia Union is not performing at the same level, I was not a level 5 leader.
No.
I need to walk away knowing that the organization is still able to perform at that level. So then as a chief financial officer, where you are or whatever it is that you're doing, you're equipping those around you, you're positioning those around you so that the organization can continue to move forward. Amen? All right. Dr. Okimas.
They took all my ideas, but I could speak on the hedgehog concept. For me, and I still struggle with this from time to time, I like to multitask. I do several things at one time. So I'm still trying to learn to take one thing at a time, get it complete and done. And over the last 2 weeks, I've been doing that, and it's been very effective. Maybe a week or so ago, I was telling one of my colleagues, and a lot of people don't know this, but a few people that are like super close, I got a little OCD in me.
Really?
When I guess my most effective time is when everything is clean and clear. When my desk is clean and clear, I'm the most effective. And if it's just piled up, I'm multitasking into that point. So taking that hedgehog attitude to just do one thing, get it complete, get it done, and move forward. And I mean, my auditor, he can tell you, whenever we did an audit, I'm doing more than one thing during the audit versus just focusing on that one point. So learning that hedgehog experience is just, and using it is real effective. So.
Do y'all remember our very first meeting? We spent some time talking about policies and people. You remember that? Anybody recollects anything that we discussed then? Anyone wants to comment on that?
I think the first day that we were talking about policy and people, you said that sometimes we should put people first. If sometimes you have to violate the policy in order to seek the good of an employee, we should go ahead and do that.
Anybody else?
What he said.
Well, and the point we were making in that conversation was that we understand, and our auditors are in the house, we understand that there's a compliance audit that they do to make sure that we're in line with policy. But we also have to remember that we are dealing with people. The worst thing people say about folks in Treasury is that we don't know how to treat people right. We're quick to run to policy. We're quick to quote policy. And when it comes to the human factor, we run from that. I had a pastor friend who was once moved from one district to another. He did not request the move. And yet, he was moved in the middle of when we had the housing problem. So he could not sell his house, and he was renting an apartment. His treasurer told him, well, you know, the policy says we'll pay for your housing for so long. And so after a while, the conference got off, and this pastor had to pay his rent and continue to pay the note on his house. Eventually, he lost the house. The point I was trying to share with these individuals was that as good as policy is, if we ever get to the point where policy is in the driver's seat, then we've lost it. Humanity trumps policy. I don't think we should violate policy just for the sake of violating policy, just because we feel we want to do something. But we should always remember that human beings are more important. I remember when I was in New York. In fact, before I moved to New York, I never knew you used oil to heat your home. And I moved to New York. I saw these trucks moving all over the place with attached to the homes. I was wondering what was going on. I thought it was a sewer truck. And they told me, no, that's oil. We had a pastor who, for whatever reason, he was in his house in the midst of winter and had no oil. Well, from a compensation standpoint, what we paid him was it. But we went a step further, filled his tank with oil. You know, we've had to give extra monies to some of our employees from time to time when I was a conference treasurer, just to give them a break. Not to spoil them. For anybody that I helped, I would bring them into my office and sit down and go through their personal finance so that we will make sure that this doesn't happen again. But we're trying to take the extra step to make sure that human beings are more important than policy. And that's the one thing that I'll always live with. I'll always be guilty of treating a person before, in place of policy. So.
And
Yes.
I'd like to add to that, because when we talked about that in our meeting, he wasn't always like that.
You weren't supposed to say that.
No, I'm putting it out there because
I'm kidding.
it's going to
true.
free somebody this morning.
Yeah.
He wasn't always like that, but he said the way he became people-driven over policy-driven is because he came from behind his desk and start mingling and hanging with the people. And when you go in pastors' homes and see how they're living, that can change you, and that can make you a people over policy person.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And it is true. It is true. Now we're going to have Tabitha to join us. Yesterday we spent some time reviewing financial statements. I know Candace she woke up, she overslept, so she missed her flight. So she wasn't there. But we spent some time reviewing financial statements. What was revealing? What did you learn? What concepts did you walk away with? Talk to us.
I realized I know a little bit more than I thought I did. But one of the things to analyze was the net asset line. And I think that'll be helpful to me in the future, pulling out those items, not necessarily that are red flags, but show a trending for where you're headed or where you've come from.
All right?
I think we spent a lot of time talking about working capital. And we sort of built a semi-wall with kerf yesterday. No, Emmanuel really broke it down to us exactly what the working capital is and represents, especially when we need to borrow money.
Right.
And how to evaluate our accounts receivables, which we all realize that we have a lot of them sitting on our books, and being the nice church folk we are, we don't go out and get our money back. So therefore we are misrepresenting ourselves and thinking we have more than we do have. And so we really spent a lot of time on that, learning that when we send an application to Curve or elsewhere to a bank, that they're not going to take our numbers and just accept them as they are, but they have to evaluate them within their own system. So we need to better understand what's on our books, where we really stand at the bottom line.
Okay. And we were toying with words like allocated, unallocated, and
Restricted
restricted, unrestricted. Somebody wants to comment on those?
Released.
And released, yeah? Somebody wants to comment on some of those?
I wasn't there yesterday, so. Yes.
Well, unallocated is pretty much funds that you've received that have not been released as of yet to those particular areas that need that allocation. Those that have been allocated, you've already released them and allocated them to those areas.
Okay, anything else? We spent how many hours? Y'all can remember anything? Go ahead, Tabitha.
Yeah, you should have. Well, my journey with financial statements started about 9 years ago. I think Seth hired me because I came from GCAS and assumed I knew how to do financial statements from start to finish. With GCAS, I did learn a lot, but I also had a lot of help, and at times there weren't necessary times where they just let you go and fly, and there was a lot of help. But when I came here, I had to do it. And so in that process, I went back to GCAS and asked for help. And they have been very helpful in putting all the numbers together and taking the GL and figuring out how to do it, and just getting your hands in there and putting it together one line at a time.
And
has taught me.
I know we ran out of time, but the reason why we went through this exercise is there are times when you have a financial statement. If you have a financial statement that you cannot defend or you do not understand, then you're in trouble. When you stand before your executive committee and you're presenting and you don't understand those numbers or what those numbers mean, you're in trouble. If a banker should contact you, I remember one time when I was treasurer in Nashville, First American Bank in those days, we had lots of business with them, but they could never understand our financial statements. So one day they invited me to their top floor with all the executives, and they said, spend time with us and explain this whole thing to us. Can you imagine if I did not know what those numbers meant and what those terminologies meant? And we are moving to becoming chief financial officers. We need to understand these things. Even before you get there, you need to understand that. And so we spent time. We spent time, and we're going to spend some more time dissecting the financial statements. What do these numbers mean? If you move these numbers from here to here, what does that mean? So that's what we did. Real quickly.
Wait,
and
can
I
I add something to that
All right.
financial part?
All right.
I'll just suggest this to everyone. The one way that helped me to really, truly understand was preparing my financials for the auditing. And I think, and I'm going to do this next year, and my staff may kill me because I didn't tell them this, but they will be helping prepare that financial statement because it exposes you to so many different things, and it allows you to make mistakes, and then you figure out how to fix it moving forward. That's
Right.
it.
Let's transition. We talked about governance, understanding the structure of the church, how the church operates. So you came to the Union Executive Committee, except for one of you who went on vacation.
Candidates.
I'll be there on
She's coming
Thursday.
Okay. And then we went to ADRA board. I serve on ADRA board, so we sought permission, and they hung with me. We went to ADRA board, and they sat and observed governance in practice. Then recently we went to Adventist Health Care Board. And then on Thursday, we're going to go to the Washington Adventist University Board. So you can't comment on Thursday yet because you've not been there. But you've been to your executive committee at a conference level. Then you've seen the Union Executive Committee at work. You've seen ADRA at work. You've seen healthcare at work. Comment on that real briefly.
I'll say going to ADRA. I didn't get the union one yet. The ADRA and the healthcare system. I think out of the two, my favorite probably was the healthcare. The three administrations, the top dogs, they were aligned with each other. There was no confrontation. There was always a unity, and they supported each other. Also, when reporting, when we talk financials, people like glaze over because they hear numbers and don't really truly understand. It wasn't like that at all. They gave short, brief synopsis of the financials, the budgeting, projections, and it was understandable for lay people, and I appreciated that.
Okay. Anyone else?
Just to piggyback off of Candace, with the Adventist Healthcare Board, all three of them knew what was going on. The president, he's a former CFO of a hospital, so he understood the financials. I mean, he was very clear on it. He asked questions and things like that too, but everybody was ready for what they had to present, from the internal auditors to the external auditors to the CFO of the hospital. All of them were very knowledgeable. There was one guy, I mean, he only been on the job for 4 months, but you wouldn't known that. I mean, he was very knowledgeable of what was happening and what was going on there. So just having, everybody knowing what's going to be presented prior to is very key.
I know there's something that you're probably not going to say, but I'll say it for you because I heard it from you all. And that was the uniqueness of, on those other entities, the president was not the chair, which created some more accountability because the president was a secretary of the board and had to report to the board, versus in our system where you have the president is also the chair of the board. He cannot report to himself. I heard some of you say that. Yeah. Okay. Karen, you're about to say.
I was about to comment on how the financial statements were presented. It wasn't just about the numbers or here's a spreadsheet. One of the presenters told the story behind the numbers, and I think that was a theme repeated in several of the meetings. You see this dropped, well, remember we voted ... So I think that's an excellent idea for presenting financial information to board individuals who don't have our financial background or accounting background and kind of glaze over when they see those numbers.
Okay, great. Now, okay, go ahead.
I think what I can take away from those two, the ADRA, especially ADRA and the Adventist Healthcare, is that everything to me that was said was directed to the mission. They knew what their mission was, and they were mission focused. They had a real good discussion at Adventist Healthcare about their new insurance and what have you, but it never strayed from the mission. And I want to say my experience when I went to I just said it.
ADRA?
To the ADRA board was, sometimes at the position that we sit, we do things within the church and we think we know what it's all about. For all these years in the church, you pick up an offering, especially the treasurer, you record that offering every month, for ADRA, for this, for that. But until I sat there and saw the world leadership sitting around in that room, I realized how big a mission ADRA was. So sometimes, we need to read more than the visitor. We need to read, we need to look into it, because what happens at the top is really affected by what happens at the bottom. Those offerings and much more of what ADRA does is what makes it able to do what they do. But a lot of times from where we sit, we don't even see that. We don't have their true vision. So that kind of helped me to see the church in the big light, get the bigger picture.
Praise the Lord. In our first meeting, there was I showed you something, and I'm not sure if you're ready for it. We watched the symphony play, and then we had a conversation about that. So if we can get to that, we will play a piece of it, just a piece of it, and then I will get some feedback from you, and then we'll see if we could get some feedback from from the rest of the group here, and then I have a few pointers, and then I know we have about 30 minutes, and then we should be done. So, okay. And we could enjoy this on and on. What on earth does this have to do with financial leadership? I don't know if you recall some of the conversation we had.
I remember us saying that working together was the number one thing, and also the direction, the leader, that the orchestra followed him precisely wherever he took them, they followed, and they trusted him to lead them in the right way.
All right. Anyone else?
I think another thing that we talked about was that the leader was reading the notes. So he had a guiding principle that he was following. So as a leader in the church, we also need to abide by the policies that we have in the church.
Okay. Anyone else?
Everybody knew their place and where they were when they supposed to come in, their notes. So you have to know your part and where you are and to make the big picture.
All right. Can we check one more and we ask anyone in the audience who
You
they
said
want
what?
to?
Oh, they had the right people on the right seat in the bus.
They had the right people.
Collectively, they made what we heard sound good. Individually, we probably would not have appreciated it as much.
Okay. Anyone else want to make a comment on that? Did you observe? Carol, yes.
All it would take would be one of them to be off key, off kilter.
Okay, let's let them hear you.
All it would take to mess the whole thing up would be just one.
Just one. Just one. All right. Anyone else? Yes, in the back. Let's wait for that mic so we can hear you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I thought it was very interesting that all of the instruments were going in the same direction. If you look at the strings, their bows were going in the same direction. So they could officially be playing the same notes, but if they were not on one accord, going in the same direction, it would throw off who's sitting to the right or to the left. So you have to be mindful of that as well.
Good point. Great point. Anyone else? Yes, Patrick.
They all have a score sheet.
What was that?
They all had a score sheet.
They all had a score sheet. So they were all playing from the same script, basically. All right? Anyone else? Yes.
I think one of the important things was the location. If you're in the right location with an orchestra, the acoustics in the building is going to sound phenomenal. If you're outside, it's going to fall dead. So being in the right location, I think, boosted morale. I think that is could definitely be important in terms of leadership and finance.
Great. Yes, Jermaine.
It's very interesting. One thing about music, if you've ever played music, is that different instruments have different timing. All on key timing, and whether it's 4/4 time or cut time, half time, all the different instruments still come in at different times and they're syncing together though. And that's the one thing that I always look at when I see that is you see different instruments coming in at a different moment, a different time, but it's important and it's specific to the piece to make it all sound great.
Great, great. Now let's take a look at a few. This is my PowerPoint. I want us to take a look at a few other observations, and then we will try to wrap up. I know we have about 21 minutes to go. Okay, let's flip to the third slide, I believe. Okay, so let's read this together. The conductor starts with a what?
A plan.
They start with a musical score and a clear idea of how it should sound. Let's read together. Only then do they attempt to recreate in real time their musical. Okay, the second one, let's go ahead. Conductor does what?
Recruits the best players.
Great conductors attract
great players.
mediocre conductors attract.
Mediocre players.
Okay?
The very best players want to work for the very best conductors.
Like attracts like. Next one.
The conductor is visible, so everyone can see him. The conductor stands on the platform so that every single member of the orchestra can see him. This is the only way the orchestra can stay in alignment with each player starting and stopping at the appropriate time.
Makes sense?
Yes.
Next one.
The conductor leads with his heart.
Great conductors are swept up in the music. They are passionate. They don't just play with their head, they also play with their heart. You can read it on their face, you can sense it in their movement,
They are fully present and playing full out.
You watch the conductor as he was moving. He was emotionally involved in the performance. Every movement, every movement. Next one.
The conductor doesn't do everything. He doesn't sell the tickets. He doesn't participate usually in the preliminaries. He doesn't even make sure that the orchestra is in tune. The concert master does that. He stays off stage until it's time for him to do what only he can do, to lead.
His job is to what?
Lead.
His job is to lead. Next one.
The conductor is aware of his gestures and their impact. A conductor can't afford to make an unintentional gesture. Everything means something. The flick of the wrist, the raising of an eyebrow, and the closing of the eyes all have meaning. A good conductor can't afford to be careless with his public demeanor.
All right, next one.
The conductor keeps his back to the audience. Conductors are aware of the audience, but their focus is on the players and their performance. The only time the conductor stops to acknowledge the audience is before the playing begins and after it's finished. Other than that, he is focused on delivering an outstanding product.
Next one.
The conductor shares the spotlight. When the concert is over and the audience is clapping, the conductor turns to the audience and takes a bow. A good conductor immediately turns to the orchestra and invites them to stand and bow as well. He shares the glory with his colleagues, realizing that without them, the music would not be possible.
So, the story is told of at a monastery of an abbot. Abbot, is that how you pronounce it? Abbot, and a distressed young man. So the young man goes, knocks on the monastery, wants to be let in. He wants to see if there's possibly something of value he could bring to the monastery, because everything he's done in life has failed. Everything he's done. He doesn't seem to be successful at anything. So the abbot comes in, lets the young man in, and they begin having a conversation. And he says to him, "What value do you bring to this organization? Would you bring to this organization?" He said, "I really don't know, because everything that I have done, I have failed." The abbot asked him and said, "You mean to tell me there's really nothing you can do?" He said, "Well, I play a little bit of chess. I may be good at chess, maybe." So the abbot calls one of his monks, who was a chess player, and said to the monk, "Monk, when you came into this monastery, you vowed that you will always obey me. So I have a command for you. I need you to sit with this young man and play a game of chess. Now, I have a sword, and whomever loses this game, I will cut his head off." So they began to play, and the young man began to gain confidence as he played the monk. And he continues to play. He continues to play. And then the young man saw that the monk made a tactical mistake. And he said to himself, "Gotcha." But he looked into the eyes of the monk and he said, "I've wasted my life. I have not accomplished much. And here is a man who has been committed to life and has done good for people. Why should he die and I live?" So the young man made an intentional wrong move. The abbot was standing there. He observed exactly what happened. He grabbed his sword, and with a swing, he cut the chessboard in half. "Stop, stop," he said. And then he said to the young man, "You have learned the two things necessary to be a monk. In playing as if your life depended on it, you learned concentration. and in reflecting on the fate of the old monk, you learn compassion. These two things, concentration and compassion, are all that's necessary for the monastic life. And he welcomed him. How does that translate to us? Concentration in what we do and compassion, that which many times we fail. So, concentration. Let's play that. And I'll tell you when to stop to pause for a minute.
Hi, I'm Richard, this is Sarah, and we're going to perform the amazing colour-changing card trick with this blue-backed deck of cards. Now the idea is very simple. I'm just going to spread the cards in front of Sarah and ask her to push any card towards the camera.
Right, okay, let's see. I'm going to go for this card here.
Okay. Now Sarah could have selected any card at all from the deck, but she selected the card which is now face down on the table. And what I'm going to ask her to do is show us which card she selected.
Right, so the card that I chose was in fact the 3 of diamonds.
The 3 of diamonds, okay, an excellent choice. That card goes back into the deck. Now I'm just going to spread the cards face up on the table. Do a little click of the fingers, and you'll see that Sarah's card here has now got a blue back. Not particularly surprising. What's slightly more surprising is all of the other cards have got red backs. And that is the amazing colour-changing card trick.
Pause. What did you observe?
Everything changed red.
Okay. Concentration. You were all very concentrated. You were all looking. You were all watching. You were paying attention, which is a good thing. But play the rest.
Hi, I'm Richard, this is Sarah, and we're going to perform the amazing colour-changing card trick with this blue-backed deck of cards. Now the idea is very simple. I'm just going to spread the cards in front of Sarah and ask her to push any card towards the camera.
Right, okay, let's see. I'm going to go for this card here.
Okay. Now Sarah could have selected any card at all from the deck, but she selected the card which is now face down on the table. And what I'm going to ask her to do is show us which card she selected.
Right, so the card that I chose was in fact the 3 of diamonds.
The 3 of diamonds, okay, an excellent choice. That card goes back into the deck. Now I'm just going to spread the cards face up on the table. Do a little click of the fingers, and you'll see that Sarah's card here has now got a blue back. Not particularly surprising. What's slightly more surprising is all of the other cards have got red backs. And that is the amazing colour-changing card trick.
And what's my point? My point is that sometimes, in the first story, he was able to concentrate and he played his game well. He had compassion. In this last video we just watched, we were so concentrated, and sometimes we're so focused on the bottom line. We're so focused on the balance sheet. We're so focused on the income statement. We're so focused that nothing around us matters. So we missed it. As the scenes were changing, as clothes were changing, as the tablecloth was changing, as the backdrop was changing, we missed all of that. And sometimes in what we do, there are things happening around us that are changing. And we do not know. You know, the last time somebody walked in your office who worked with you, and you know them well enough, but when you ask them, how are you feeling today? and their head dropped just a tinge bit, did you just pat them on the back and say it's going to be okay? Or all what you were expecting was they have to be productive? The bottom line. The bottom line. And so my prayer is that we'll be able to concentrate on our task, and also we'll be sympathetic to others, those around us. I want to thank my team here. They've been hanging with me. We are going to about May of next year. We're going to end up in the Big Apple and spend some time on the floor of the stock exchange, seeing what's going on the stock exchange and learning a little bit about what happens in that world. So thank you all for hanging with me. And may God bless each one of you. And thank you for the time. We have 9 minutes, so we made time.
There's a couple of questions.
Oh, we have a couple of
got
questions? Oh, yes,
on
please,
the
please.
iPad.
Yes, okay.
The first one is, what can I do if I work with the president who likes to spend money and makes financial commitments without consulting me first?
Okay. All right, who's going to answer that? Yeah, you can answer. You've been hanging with me long enough. And anybody else, feel free to answer that. But
Okay, so I don't have that problem. So, but I'll say this. I sat down with my president, and in the previous, employees would go to the president, ask for money because they didn't want to go to the treasurer, and he would promise that. However, I sat down with him, and then we came to a conclusion that we will work together. If someone requests his funds, he's going to send them to me, and we will sit down and talk. I would say have a brutally honest conversation with your administration, your president, heart to heart. And it may not be the easiest conversation to have, but you still need to have it. It's a brutal fact that you need to have, because in reality, it is going to affect your bottom line if he's promising money that you don't have in your budget. But if you communicate, is probably the key in any relationship. Communicate what your desires are, what should happen, and y'all could come to same ground. That's all I have.
Tabitha?
Well, I would add that as the treasurer or whoever is preparing the budget, you make provision in the budget for those kinds of questions that will come at some point in the year.
And just to add to that, I'm not sure how many of you include your president in the budget process. When I was treasurer in Northeastern Conference, and when I got there, we had we were having major issues. We couldn't even run payroll. But the process I went through was my staff and I put the initial numbers together, and when we balanced it, then we brought in the conference secretary and the conference president, and we went through the whole thing, and I said to him, Mr. President, you're the first officer. You set the priorities, so you tell us where you think the emphasis needs to be. So he says, well, we need to put more money into youth ministries. Then I'll say to him, okay, so where do you want us to take it from? Because we have to keep a balanced budget. But at the end of the day, it was balanced. And when he would come to me after the budget was voted and said, Seth, we need to spend money on this, I had a simple question for him. So where is it coming from? And he was saying to me, oh, you know, we decided we're going to put so much money here. Listen, let's move it from here and move it there. I was engaging my president. And sometimes when the president is not part of the process, and you just tell him, here's the budget, when he's ready to spend money, he's ready to spend money. But when you engage him, you know, he said to me, Seth, I have never been through a budget process before. So, next question. We have 5 minutes.
Should I really read these other? I'm going to read them.
Read it.
Because it's going to make our day. I'm presently an associate treasurer. Do I have to wait until I become a conference treasurer before I can wear a power pink shirt?
No. Frank, did you write that?
And here's the last one before this will break us out. All right. This is for you, Elder Bardu. Rumors are circulating that you are on the short list to be Ben Carson's choice to be his chief of the Federal Reserve. Is that true, or are you holding out for Tom Evans' position?
It's time for the benediction. Thank you all so much. Let's give them a hand.